At the far edge of a quiet village, where dusty lanes twisted like forgotten paths of time, there stood an old neem tree, tall and watchful, as though it had seen centuries pass by. Beneath its shade lived a stray dog. His coat was a patchwork of brown and white, uneven yet beautiful, as if nature had splashed colors on him with an absent-minded brush. His eyes were deep, so deep that one could almost fall into them, eyes that seemed to hold silent stories of hunger, loneliness, and also a fragile hope. Nobody in the village had given him a name, but the children, in their innocence, called him Buddy. Buddy's life was a strange rhythm between silence and survival. Each morning, when the village awoke to the sound of clinking tea glasses and the aroma of freshly brewed chai drifting from a small shop nearby, Buddy would sit patiently at the doorstep. Sometimes the shopkeeper would toss him a dry piece of bread, which he would eat with the kind of gratitude only the hungry truly know. Through the day he wandered the narrow lanes, nose close to the ground, searching for scraps near garbage bins, or trying to play with children who ran about chasing their rubber ball. Some days he succeeded in making them laugh. On other days they shooed him away. But when night fell, when doors closed and laughter retreated into homes, Buddy remained, lonely, quiet, curled up beneath the neem tree. The wind rustled its leaves, brushing against his fur, and he would curl into a tight ball to keep warm. His eyes would stare into the darkness, filled with a silent yearning. Would there ever be a day when he would have a home, a family, someone who would call him their own? One child, however, saw Buddy differently. His name was Arav, a boy of only 7 years, with eyes full of kindness, far beyond his age. Arav had a habit. Whenever his mother prepared bread, he would sneak a small piece into his pocket and bring it to Buddy. Every time he fed him, Buddy would lick Arav's tiny fingers before eating, as though saying, "You are my whole world." That afternoon the sun blazed harshly, but Arav ran across the lane with excitement. In his hand was a small piece of sweet bread smeared with jaggery. Kneeling down, he whispered, "Buddy, today I brought you something special. Sweet bread. You'll love it, right?" Buddy's tail wagged so furiously it seemed as if his whole body had turned into joy itself. He devoured the bread, then gently rested his head in Arav's lap. The boy giggled, running his small fingers through the dog's rough fur. "One day," Arav promised softly, "I'll take you home with me. You'll sleep in my bed and play with my toys. You won't ever be lonely again." Buddy did not speak, but his glistening eyes said everything. They sparkled with hope, trust, and that indescribable bond which can only be felt between a child and a dog. The day slowly leaned toward evening. Golden light filtered through the neem leaves, painting the lane in patterns of shade and warmth. The air grew calm. But in that serenity, something sudden and terrifying happened. Arav, holding his little rubber ball, ran across the lane, not noticing a bicycle speeding toward him. The rider rang the bell frantically, but the boy was too lost in his play to hear. Time seemed to slow down in that instant. The villagers who stood nearby froze. Fear struck their hearts as they realized the child was in danger. But before anyone could react, Buddy moved. His ears shot upright, his body stiffened like a spring, and then he leapt forward with lightning speed. In one bound, he reached Arav, pushing him away from the path of the rushing bicycle. The cycle swerved, brushing past with a screeching sound. Arav tumbled to the ground safely, a little shaken but unharmed. Buddy, however, took a scrape on his paw as the wheel grazed him. Arav's eyes filled with tears. His mother came running, panic and relief colliding in her heart. She scooped her child into her arms and looked at Buddy, standing, limping slightly but alive, his eyes still watching Arav to make sure the boy was safe. In that moment, everything changed. The villagers no longer saw Buddy as a stray. They saw him as a guardian, a protector, an angel in the guise of a dog. Arav's mother knelt before Buddy, tears spilling from her eyes, and placed her hand gently on his head. "You saved my child," she whispered, her voice trembling. "From today, you are also my child. You will never be alone again." That night, for the very first time, Buddy did not curl up under the neem tree. For the first time, He did not stare into the darkness, wondering if love would ever find him. Instead, he lay inside a home, warmth surrounding him, his belly full, his heart fuller. He had a family. He had a name not just spoken by children at play, but by people who meant it. That night was unlike any night Buddy had ever known. For years he had slept beneath the neem tree, with the rough ground pressing against his ribs, the cold wind cutting through his thin fur, and the loneliness curling around him like a second skin. But now, for the very first time, he stepped inside a home. Arav's mother guided him gently, as though afraid he might vanish if she moved too quickly. The little house was modest, a mud-plastered floor, walls painted with faded whitewash, and the faint aroma of food lingering in the air. A single lantern burned in the corner, its glow casting soft shadows. To Buddy, it felt like entering another world, one he had only dreamed about while watching families close their doors every evening. The moment he crossed the threshold, Buddy paused. His paws pressed against the cool floor, and his nose twitched, catching scents he had never truly experienced before. Freshly cooked lentils, the earthy fragrance of damp walls, the faint sweetness of milk cooling on the kitchen counter. His eyes darted everywhere, cautious yet full of wonder. Arav tugged at his mother's sari and whispered excitedly, "See, Mama. Buddy is inside now. He's our dog. He'll never go hungry again." Buddy wagged his tail, still hesitant, unsure if he truly belonged. Years of rejection, of being pushed away with stones or harsh words, had taught him not to trust too quickly. But then Arav knelt down and wrapped his small arms around Buddy's neck. That hug, warm and unreserved, broke through every wall Buddy had built inside his heart. In that moment, he understood. He was not a visitor. He was family. Arav's father, a tall man with weary eyes from long days of labor, walked into the room. For a second, he frowned, surprised to see a stray dog in his home. But when he saw the way Arav clung to Buddy, and when he remembered how this dog had thrown himself in front of danger to save his son, his expression softened. He let out a sigh and said quietly, "If he risked his life for our child, then he is no stray. He is one of us now." The words fell into Buddy's ears like a promise written in stone. That night, Arav's mother placed an old blanket near Arav's bed. It wasn't much, just a simple faded piece of cloth, but to Buddy it felt like the softest throne. He circled the blanket twice, then curled himself onto it, sighing deeply as though releasing years of weariness. Arav climbed into his bed but leaned over the edge, his little hand brushing Buddy's fur. "Good night, Buddy," he whispered, his voice already slipping into the dreams of sleep. Buddy kept his eyes open for a while, watching the shadows dance on the walls, listening to the gentle breathing of the family around him. His ears twitched at the sound of crickets outside, but for the first time, the night didn't feel threatening. It felt safe. His eyelids grew heavy, and he drifted into a sleep so peaceful that even the wind outside seemed to hush itself in respect. When dawn arrived, Buddy woke to something he had never truly known before: warmth, not just from the blanket beneath him or the gentle rays of the sun slipping through the window, but from the very air itself. He stretched, his paws extending, his back arching, and then he shook himself awake, his collarless neck catching the morning light. Arav was still asleep, his tiny chest rising and falling in rhythmic peace. Buddy padded over quietly, nudging the boy's hand with his nose. Arav stirred, blinked open his sleepy eyes, and then grinned widely. "You're still here, Buddy. I thought it was a dream." The boy hugged him again, pressing his face into Buddy's rough fur. In that embrace was the certainty of a bond that no force could break. Breakfast in the household that morning had a new guest at the table. Arav's mother set aside a bowl with warm milk and a torn piece of roti for Buddy. He lapped at it gratefully, his tail wagging in rhythm with every gulp. The father chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Look at him. He eats as though he hasn't seen food in days." "He hasn't," Arav's mother replied gently, watching Buddy with pity and affection. From that day forward, the house changed. There was laughter where once there had been silence. There was barking that echoed through the lane, waking neighbors with curiosity. Arav no longer played alone, for Buddy was always by his side, running, tumbling, chasing after rubber balls, and lying beside him during lazy afternoons. But most of all there was trust. Buddy had found his place not under a tree, not on the cold ground, but inside hearts that had chosen to love him. The days that followed felt like the unfolding of a new life for Buddy. No longer did he wake beneath the neem tree with an empty stomach and a heart weighed down by solitude. Now, each morning began with the soft laughter of Arav, with the aroma of warm food drifting from the kitchen, and with the gentle touch of a family that had claimed him as their own. For Arav, life too had changed. He no longer ran through the lanes alone, clutching his little rubber ball. Wherever he went, Buddy was by his side, his shadow, his protector, his playmate. Together they became inseparable, like the rising sun and its light. The village, too, began to notice. At first, people were skeptical. For years, they had seen Buddy wandering as a stray, sniffing through garbage, sleeping under trees and scavenging for scraps. He had been just another nameless creature that existed at the edge of their lives. But now, when they saw him walking proudly beside Arav, his tail held high, his coat cleaner, his eyes brighter, they could not help but pause. Children, who once threw pebbles at him, now ran up to pet him. Women at the wells smiled when they saw Arav holding his dog's leash, and some even set aside leftovers for him. The shopkeeper, who had occasionally tossed dry bread, now bent down with affection, offering pieces of warm chapati as Buddy wagged his tail in gratitude. But it wasn't just kindness that the villagers felt. It was respect. They all remembered the evening when Buddy had risked his life to save Arav from the bicycle. That act had planted something in their hearts, something that grew stronger each day, a recognition that this dog was not merely an animal, but a loyal soul, a guardian in fur. Buddy, for his part, gave back tenfold. He had always been watchful, but now his vigilance had purpose. Wherever Arav went, Buddy's eyes scanned the surroundings, his ears twitching at every sound, his nose quivering at every scent. If a cart rolled too fast down the lane, Buddy placed himself between it and the boy. If strangers passed too close, Buddy stood tall, his body stiffening until he was sure there was no threat. And if Arav laughed and ran ahead, Buddy chased after him, as though the world itself would collapse if they were separated. Their bond became legendary in the village. Old men sitting under banyan trees would nod and say, "That dog is no ordinary stray. He carries the heart of a warrior." The seasons changed. The hot winds of summer softened into the gentle rains of monsoon. Arav and Buddy splashed together in puddles, their laughter and barks mingling with the sound of raindrops hitting tin roofs. In winter, when the nights grew bitterly cold, Arav's mother would place an extra blanket on the floor for Buddy, though more often than not, Buddy would sneak onto Arav's bed, curling at his feet as though he had always belonged there. Every festival, too, became brighter. During Diwali, when lamps lit up the village, Buddy wore a little garland of marigolds around his neck, and children squealed in delight, calling him the guardian of light. During Holi, his fur carried streaks of harmless colors as he barked happily, chasing after children who laughed until their stomachs ached. But beneath all these joyful moments, there was something deeper, almost sacred about Buddy's presence. He was more than a pet. He was the silent thread weaving through the fabric of Arav's life, giving him courage, companionship, and unconditional love. And yet, life, with all its beauty, carries within it shadows. Though the villagers now respected Buddy, there were still some who could not understand such a bond. There were whispers, questions about whether keeping a dog was clean, whether it was wise to feed an animal when so many humans went hungry, whether it was safe to let a child grow so attached to a creature that once roamed the streets. These whispers floated like cold winds, unnoticed at first, but destined to stir storms later. But for now, Buddy did not care. Arav did not care. The family did not care. Their days were filled with love, and their nights with peace. And in the heart of that little house, Buddy finally lived, not as a stray, not as an outsider, but as what he was always meant to be, a loyal friend. As months turned into seasons, Buddy's place in the household felt unshakable. He had woven himself into every corner of their lives, from the laughter-filled mornings to the peaceful evenings when the family gathered together. Arav's father often remarked, half in jest, "This house has 4 hearts now, mine, yours, Arav's, and Buddy's." And though he laughed after saying it, there was truth in those words. Yet life, in its unpredictable way, has a manner of testing bonds, of placing storms in the path of even the strongest relationships. For Buddy, that storm began quietly, as all storms do, with whispers. Some villagers, despite respecting Buddy for saving Arav, remained skeptical. In narrow alleys and at the village well, voices rose in murmurs. Is it wise to keep a street dog inside the home? Dogs belong outside, not on beds and floors where children eat. What if it bites someone one day? They may trust it now, but who can ever truly trust an animal? At first, Arav's family ignored these words, but whispers, when repeated often enough, grow heavier. One evening, as Arav's father returned from the fields, a neighbor stopped him. "You are kind people," the man said, "but kindness should not blind you. That dog, he was born astray. You cannot erase his nature. One day he might harm your son. Better to be cautious than regret." Those words clung to Arav's father like burrs on cloth. He wanted to dismiss them, but when he looked at Buddy, lying peacefully by Arav's side, he wondered, could love truly erase a past of survival and hunger? Could instincts born on the street ever be softened fully? The first true test came on a stormy night. Rain lashed against the roofs, the winds howled like restless spirits, and thunder cracked across the sky. Arav, frightened by the noise, clung to Buddy, burying his face in the dog's fur. Buddy, though uneasy at the thunder, stayed still, his body warm and steady, his presence calming the trembling boy. It was then that the family heard a commotion outside. Shouts rose in the darkness, and the sound of hurried footsteps echoed through the muddy lane. Arav's father opened the door just a crack and saw 2 men running, their faces half hidden by scarves, clutching stolen sacks of grain from the village storehouse. The storm had drowned out their crime, but villagers had spotted them and were giving chase. The men, desperate to escape, darted into the very lane where Arav's home stood. One of them, seeing the open door, rushed toward it. Arav's father tried to push the door shut, but the man shoved back with brute strength, nearly knocking him over. Arav's mother screamed. Arav froze, eyes wide in terror. And then Buddy moved. He sprang forward, a blur of muscle and fur, his growl deep and thunderous, echoing louder than the storm itself. His teeth flashed as he lunged at the intruder, sinking them into the man's arm. The thief cried out in pain, stumbling back, his sack dropping into the mud. The other man tried to rush in, but Buddy barred the doorway, barking with a fury none had ever heard before. His body was no longer just a companion's, it was a wall, a shield, a force of nature standing between danger and the family he had claimed as his own. The villagers, chasing the thieves, arrived just in time to see Buddy driving them away. The men fled into the darkness, leaving behind their stolen goods, their fear etched into the night. When it was over, Buddy stood panting at the doorway, rain dripping from his fur, his chest heaving, but his eyes clear and unyielding. Arav ran to him, hugging him tightly despite the mud and rain. "You saved us, Buddy," the boy cried. "You're our hero again." The family was shaken, but alive. The villagers praised Buddy, clapping his sides, calling him brave. Yet not all voices were of praise. Some muttered uneasily, watching the deep bite marks the thief had suffered. Did you see his teeth? One day that strength might turn on them. Today it was thieves. Tomorrow who knows? The seed of doubt once again was planted. That night, as Buddy lay curled beside Arav's bed, his fur still damp from the storm, Arav's father sat awake, troubled. He had seen Buddy's loyalty with his own eyes. He had seen the courage, the selflessness. And yet in the back of his mind, those whispered fears returned. What if? Buddy, of course, knew none of this. All he knew was that the boy beside him was safe, the family was safe, and his place was here. For him, love was simple. Loyalty was simple. He needed no questions, no doubts. His heart was certain, unshaken, unbreakable. But life, as it often does, was not finished testing him. The stormy night became a story the village repeated for weeks. People spoke of how Buddy had leapt at the thieves, how his growl had cut through the rain, how his courage had saved Arav's family. For many, it was proof that the dog was no ordinary stray. But for others, it was something darker, a reminder of teeth bared, of power that could wound as much as it could protect. Children gathered around Arav and Buddy the next day, wide-eyed with admiration. "Your dog is a hero," they said, tugging gently at Buddy's ears, patting his back. Arav's chest swelled with pride. "See? I told you, he's the best dog in the world." But whispers travelled faster than praise. By the well, some women murmured, "Yes, he saved them, but he bit a man. What if he bites a child next?" By the fields, men shook their heads. "Once an animal has tasted blood, it cannot forget. Keep watch. Trouble may come." Those words reached Arav's father. He wanted to brush them aside, but they echoed late at night when the house was quiet. He would watch Buddy sleeping soundly near Arav's bed, one paw twitching as though chasing dreams, and a knot of doubt would twist in his chest. Buddy, however, sensed none of this doubt. His days were filled with devotion. He followed Arav to school, waiting patiently outside until classes were done. He walked with Arav's mother to the market, standing guard when carts rolled too close. He sat by Arav's father in the fields, ears twitching at every rustle in the crops. He belonged to them entirely, his every breath devoted to their safety and happiness. Yet destiny rarely allows peace to remain untouched. One afternoon, as the sun beat down heavily on the dusty lanes, Arav and a group of children played near the edge of the village. Their laughter echoed as they chased their rubber ball, running barefoot across the ground. Buddy darted among them, his tail wagging furiously, his barks joining in the chorus of joy. Then the ball rolled too far. It bounced across the path and slipped into a cart piled with hay, parked on the roadside. Arav, without thinking, ran after it. But hidden within the hay was a danger no child could have foreseen. A coiled snake, disturbed by the sudden movement. Its scales shimmered in the sun, its tongue flickering as it prepared to strike. Time slowed. Arav's small hand reached toward the ball. The snake reared back, ready to strike. Buddy saw it. In a heartbeat he was there. His body slammed between Arav and the snake, his growl fierce and unyielding. The snake lunged, but Buddy snapped with lightning speed, his jaws closing around the serpent before it could reach the boy. The children screamed. Arav stumbled backward, falling into the dust. The struggle was brief, but brutal. Buddy shook the snake violently, flinging it to the ground, lifeless. His chest heaved, his eyes burned with protective fire. He turned to Arav, sniffing him frantically, as though to make sure not a single harm had touched him. The children's screams drew villagers. They rushed to the scene, eyes wide with shock. When they saw the dead snake, their awe was mixed with fear. Buddy stood over it, his teeth bared, his muzzle stained with the battle's traces. Arav, however, saw only his savior. He threw his arms around Buddy, sobbing into his fur. "You saved me again, Buddy, you always save me." But the villagers' whispers began at once. "First thieves, now a snake. How many more times will he use those teeth? Today it was an animal. But what if tomorrow it's a person? Can they truly control him?" The praise for Buddy turned sharp-edged, tangled with suspicion. Some called him a guardian, others called him a danger waiting to happen. That evening, Arav's father sat in silence, his head heavy with the weight of the village's words. He looked at Buddy, lying peacefully beside Arav, exhausted from the day's events. He thought of the snake, of the thieves, of the countless ways this dog had saved them, and yet, in the corner of his mind, the questions lingered. What if the villagers are right? What if loyalty one day turns into danger? For Buddy, though, there was no such doubt. He did not measure his actions against whispers. He did not question the cost of his loyalty. To him, there was only one truth, simple and eternal. Arav was his boy, his family, his world. And for that boy, for that family, Buddy would fight the storm, the thief, the snake, or even the weight of 1,000 doubts. But the storm brewing in the hearts of the villagers was one he could not fight with teeth or courage. It was a storm of fear, and fear, once planted, has a way of growing into something dangerous. Days after the incident with the snake, the atmosphere in the village had subtly changed. Where once Buddy had been greeted with smiles and pats, now eyes watched him more closely. Mothers pulled their children away when he approached, and men crossing the lanes whispered in hushed tones. Some stared at him with suspicion, as though the courage he had once displayed was now a threat waiting to strike. The line between hero and danger, they seemed to think, was a thin one, and Buddy had walked it too often. Inside Arav's home, however, life continued with the same rhythm. Arav, oblivious to the growing murmurings of the villagers, treated Buddy like his shadow, inseparable and full of affection. He tugged at Buddy's ears in the morning, laughed at his playful antics, and shared little scraps of food with him. The boy's trust in the dog was absolute, as was Buddy's devotion. Every wag of his tail, every gentle nudge, every protective glance was a reaffirmation of the bond that had been forged on that stormy night and tested again in the face of danger. Yet the outside world is seldom patient, and even the strongest bonds are occasionally questioned. A local farmer, returning from his fields one evening, approached Arav's father with a stern look. "I saw your dog chasing after my goats today," he said. "He knocked over the fence and almost injured them. I've warned you before. Animals like that, no matter how loyal, cannot be trusted around livestock. Something bad will happen." Arav's father's stomach knotted. He had defended Buddy many times, praising his loyalty, insisting that the dog was harmless when guided by love. But the man's words planted a seed of unease. Could Buddy, in his strength and exuberance, accidentally harm someone or something? And if he did, would the villagers turn against them? Buddy, for his part, seemed unaware of the tension. He lay in the courtyard, ears twitching at every distant sound, eyes following Arav as he played with his friends. The dog's world was simple: protect the boy, love the family, and do what felt right in every moment. He did not understand whispers or suspicions. He only understood the boy who had once clung to him in fear, and the family that had offered him warmth and shelter. But life has a way of testing even the purest intentions. That afternoon a commotion erupted near the village well. A group of travelers had stopped to rest and water their animals, and one of the strangers, unfamiliar with Buddy, was startled by the dog's presence. Buddy, sensing the tension and protective instinct flaring, barked loudly, standing between Arav and the approaching stranger. The traveler recoiled, shaking his head. "This dog is dangerous," he said loudly. "It lunged at me. Who knows what it might do next?" A small crowd began to gather. The villagers, already uneasy about Buddy's strength and past acts of heroism, murmured their concerns. Fear mingled with awe, and in the blink of an eye Buddy was no longer seen as the hero who had saved a child and fought off a snake. He was a potential threat. Arav ran to Buddy's side, holding his arm around the dog's neck. "It's okay, Buddy. He's not dangerous. You're fine," he whispered, trying to calm both the boy and the dog. But the villagers' whispers only grew louder, and Arav's father felt a tightening in his chest. The family's safe haven, it seemed, was now being questioned not by natural dangers, but by the judgment and fear of others. That night, as rain began to fall softly, Buddy curled himself on his blanket, unaware of the storm of doubt brewing just beyond the walls of his home. Arav slept beside him, arms draped around his furry protector, breathing steady and trusting. Buddy kept watch, his ears twitching at every sound, alert and devoted as always. Yet somewhere in the village, the seed of fear was growing roots. It whispered that Buddy's strength could turn against the innocent, that loyalty could be misinterpreted, and that even the purest intentions might not shield one from human suspicion. Buddy could fight thieves, snakes, or storms, but he could not fight the invisible weight of doubt, nor the creeping tension that might one day test the very bond that had saved his life and that of the boy he loved. In the quiet of the night, as the rain pattered against the roof, Buddy rested, calm but vigilant. He did not know that tomorrow might bring a challenge unlike any he had faced before, a test not of courage against obvious danger, but of loyalty in the face of misunderstanding and fear. For Buddy, The path of love and protection had always been clear. For the humans around him, the journey to trust was only beginning. The following morning dawned heavy and grey, the sky swollen with rain clouds that seemed to press down on the village like an unspoken warning. The air carried a tension that was almost tangible, a subtle shift that even Buddy seemed to sense. He padded through the courtyard, his paws silent against the damp ground, ears twitching, nose quivering, as he caught the scent of unease mingling with the fresh scent of rain. Arav, blissfully unaware of the undercurrent of fear in the village, ran out into the yard, clutching his worn rubber ball, laughing with pure joy. Buddy bounded after him tail high, barking with delight, yet his eyes constantly scanned the surrounding lanes, vigilant as always. It wasn't long before the whispers turned into something more tangible. A group of villagers, led by the very farmer who had warned Arav's father days ago, gathered near the edge of the yard. Their faces were grim, their voices low but insistent. "This dog cannot remain here," one of them said, pointing a finger at Buddy. "Too many incidents, it's only a matter of time before it bites a child, or worse. You cannot control it forever." Arav's father stepped forward, his expression tight with a mixture of anger and concern. "Buddy has never harmed anyone," he said firmly. "He has saved my son's life more times than I can count. You speak of danger, but you forget courage and loyalty." The farmer shook his head, his eyes cold. "Loyalty is not enough. Strength without control is dangerous. And this village will not take responsibility if something goes wrong. You must decide. Keep him inside the house at your own risk, or he leaves. There is no middle ground." Arav's mother gasped, clutching her child to her chest. Arav's small hand reached out to Buddy, fingers trembling slightly. "Don't take him away," he cried. Buddy, sensing the fear in the boy, pressed his head into Arav's lap, tail wagging gently, as though trying to reassure him. His eyes shone with unspoken words. "I am here. I will not leave. I belong with you." But the villagers were not swayed. Their eyes, filled with unease, judged him not for his actions, but for the possibility of future harm. And in that judgment lay the cruelest threat a loyal heart could face. The fear of losing the family he had fought for, the home he had come to love, and the boy who had given him his name. Days turned into tense standoffs. Every time Buddy stepped into the lane, neighbors watched with suspicion. When Arav played outside, adults followed at a distance, ready to intervene at the slightest misstep. Buddy, unaware of human politics, continued his protective vigilance, but the weight of disapproval hung in the air like a storm cloud, ready to burst. It was during one of these tense days that a minor incident ignited the conflict. A new merchant arrived in the village, bringing a small cart of fruits and vegetables. Curious, Buddy approached, sniffing the air. The merchant, unaccustomed to such an assertive dog, stepped back, startled by Buddy's barking. The villagers, already on edge, seized the moment to voice their fears louder. "See," one shouted. "Even strangers fear him. How long before he attacks someone he doesn't know?" Arav's father felt the familiar knot tighten in his chest. He looked at Buddy, whose ears were flattened slightly in the merchant's presence, his body tense but not aggressive. The dog's instincts were protective, not harmful. Yet to those who only saw teeth and strength, intentions did not matter. That evening, as Buddy lay curled beside Arav in the warm glow of the home, the boy whispered, "Don't leave me, Buddy. Please, you're my best friend." Buddy nudged Arav's face gently with his nose, resting his head on the boy's chest, a silent vow passing between them. He would never leave, not for storms, not for thieves, not for whispers, not even for fear. His loyalty was absolute, unshakable and unwavering, but loyalty alone could not calm the village. The farmer and other villagers convened that night, voices low but tense. Plans were made, warnings issued, and decisions taken without understanding the depth of the bond between boy and dog. They did not see the countless times Buddy had saved Arav, or how the dog's heart was intertwined with the child's. They saw only potential danger, and in fear, they sought control. For Buddy, the days ahead would be the greatest test of all. His courage and loyalty had always been proven through action, but now he faced something he could not confront with strength alone. Human fear, stubborn and unyielding, threatening to pull him from the only home he had ever truly known. And yet, as he rested beside Arav, listening to the steady rhythm of the boy's breathing, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. No storm, no fear, and no threat could ever sever the bond that had been forged in love and trust. He would face whatever came, protect the boy at all costs, and prove in ways only the heart can understand that loyalty transcends suspicion. And courage is measured not just in battle but in devotion. A week passed with a tension that thickened like fog over the village. Every step Buddy took outside the house was watched, every wag of his tail scrutinized, every bark dissected for signs of aggression. The dog, oblivious to the villagers' growing unease, carried on his duties with unwavering devotion. He followed Arav to school, accompanied the mother to the market, and even walked alongside the father in the fields, his eyes constantly scanning the surroundings, alert for any potential threat. His world remained simple: protect the boy, guard the family, and act with loyalty at every moment. But the villagers' whispers were no longer whispers. They had grown into murmured demands and open confrontation. One afternoon, as Arav played near the edge of the courtyard, the farmer who had first warned Arav's father appeared, his face set in hard lines. He was flanked by two other men, their arms crossed, eyes cold and judgmental. "This dog cannot stay here any longer," the farmer said, his voice loud enough to carry through the narrow lanes. "It threatens our children, our livestock, our peace. You have been warned, but still you let him roam freely. That ends now." Arav froze, his rubber ball slipping from his hands. Buddy immediately positioned himself between the boy and the approaching men, ears erect, low growl rumbling in his chest. The dog's protective instinct flared like a shield, every muscle coiled and ready to spring into action. His eyes locked onto the men, unwavering, and in that gaze was a silent message. "Do not come near him. Do not come near my family." Arav's father stepped forward, fists clenched, his face pale with anger and fear. "Buddy has done nothing but protect us," he said firmly. "He saved Arav's life, and he has never harmed anyone in this village. He is not a threat. He is family." The farmer's expression hardened. "Family or not, strength without control is dangerous. This is your choice. Either confine him or remove him from the village entirely. Do not expect the rest of us to live in fear while you dote on your dog." Arav's mother clutched her son to her chest, tears welling in her eyes. The boy's small hand reached out for Buddy, his fingers tangling in the dog's fur. "Please," Arav whispered. "He's my best friend. Don't let them take him away." Buddy, sensing the boy's fear, pressed himself closer, resting his head gently on Arav's lap, as though promising that he would never leave. His eyes held a quiet defiance that spoke louder than words. He would face any danger, endure any test, and confront any threat, human or otherwise, to protect his family. The standoff lasted for what felt like hours. The men spoke, their voices rising and falling, weighing logic against fear. They could not see the countless small moments of loyalty that defined Buddy's life, the way he had shielded Arav from thieves, the way he had faced the snake without hesitation, the way he had protected the family from every unseen danger. To them, all that mattered was the potential for harm, the uncertainty of instinct. Finally, Arav's father made a decision that would define the next chapter of their lives. "Buddy is staying," he said firmly. "He belongs here, and no fear, no threat, and no misunderstanding will change that. If you cannot accept him, then that is your problem, not ours." The villagers muttered, some shaking their heads, others leaving in frustrated silence. The threat remained simmering beneath the surface, but for now, the battle was won. Buddy's loyalty had not wavered, and the family's love had not faltered. That night, as rain began to fall gently outside, Buddy lay curled beside Arav once more, his body warm, steady, and comforting. The boy whispered into his fur, "I knew you'd stay. You're my hero, Buddy. My best friend forever." Buddy closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his devotion and the trust of the family he had saved. He had faced threats of all kinds, storms, thieves, snakes, and human fear, but he had never wavered. Loyalty, he understood, was not just about action in moments of danger. It was about presence, about being there when love and trust demanded it most. Outside, the village slept, uncertain and wary. Inside, a boy and his dog rested, their bond unbroken, their hearts entwined, and their courage silently declaring that no obstacle, however great, could sever the connection forged through trials, danger, and unshakable loyalty. Buddy had proven once again that true guardianship was measured not in strength alone, but in unwavering devotion, courage born of love, and the silent promise to protect those who depended on him, no matter the cost. The days following the confrontation with the villagers passed in tense routine. Buddy remained vigilant, his eyes ever watchful, his ears alert to the faintest sound, while Arav's laughter and the warmth of the household brought a fragile sense of normalcy. But life, as it often does not allow comfort to last forever. Just as the family had begun to breathe a little easier, a new challenge emerged, one that would test Buddy's loyalty, courage, and heart in ways even he could not have anticipated. It began on a bright, crisp morning when Arav's father decided to take the boy and Buddy on a short walk to the forest path at the edge of the village. The path was familiar, a ribbon of dirt and stone flanked by towering trees and wildflowers, a place where Arav and Buddy often played together. But that morning, the air carried a tension that neither the boy nor the dog could initially explain. The wind rustled through the leaves, whispering in the branches as if warning of some unseen danger. Buddy sniffed the air continuously, low growl murmuring in his throat, tail stiff and alert. Arav ran ahead, giggling as he kicked a small stone into the path, unaware of the subtle signals Buddy was reading with practiced instinct. Buddy followed closely, his body moving with careful precision, eyes scanning every shadow and movement. The father walked behind them, his mind preoccupied with thoughts of village affairs, not realizing the unfolding danger. Suddenly, a sharp cry pierced the air. Arav stopped abruptly, his small face twisted in panic. From the underbrush emerged a pack of wild dogs, gaunt and feral, their eyes glinting with hunger and teeth bared in silent menace. They moved as one, circling, sizing up their target. Arav, small and defenseless, and Buddy, who had immediately positioned himself between the boy and the approaching threat. Time slowed. Buddy's body tensed, muscles coiling like springs, his growl deepening to a rumble that echoed through the forest path. The wild dogs advanced cautiously, sensing the resolve in the brown and white protector before them. Buddy did not flinch, did not retreat. He understood instinctively that this was a battle of survival, a challenge to his loyalty and courage. Arav's father froze, fear rooting him to the spot, while Arav clung to Buddy's side, shaking yet trusting completely in his guardian. The first wild dog lunged, snapping its jaws. Buddy reacted with lightning speed, intercepting the strike and pinning the attacker back with sheer strength. Barking and snapping, he forced the others to hesitate, buying precious seconds for Arav to move to safety behind a tree. The pack regrouped, circling, hungry eyes never leaving the boy. Buddy's growl intensified, low and commanding, a warning that the feral intruders could not ignore. Then the fight began in earnest. Buddy was faster, smarter, and fueled by a courage born of love. He dodged snapping jaws, countered lunges with precision, and bit only when necessary to keep the attackers at bay. His fur bristled, body taut with effort, yet his focus never wavered. Arav's father, finally shaking off his paralysis, tried to intervene, but Buddy's instincts dominated the moment, every decision calculated to protect the boy first. Minutes stretched like hours. The forest seemed to hold its breath as Buddy faced down the pack, each successful move a testament to his loyalty, his intelligence, and the unbreakable bond he shared with the boy. The wild dogs, sensing defeat, finally retreated into the underbrush, leaving Buddy standing, panting, fur matted with leaves and dirt, but victorious. Arav ran forward, hugging Buddy with all his strength. "You saved me. You saved me again, Buddy." The dog pressed his head into the boy's embrace, eyes soft, calm, and filled with a warmth that no danger could diminish. Arav's father knelt beside them, breathless, admiration and relief mingling with lingering fear. You truly are our guardian," he said, voice trembling. "I see now. There is nothing you would not do to protect this family." Buddy, exhausted but unyielding, simply lay down beside Arav, resting his head on the boy's lap. For him there was no glory, no pride, only the satisfaction of fulfilling his purpose. Loyalty, courage, and love had carried him through yet another trial, proving to everyone who doubted that the bond between him and the family was unbreakable, forged not just by need, but by trust, sacrifice, and unwavering devotion. Yet, even in victory, Buddy sensed the weight of what was to come. The villagers' fear had not dissipated. It had merely simmered beneath the surface. There would be those who questioned, who doubted, who sought to challenge his place in the home. But for now, in this moment, the forest path echoed with the sound of a boy's laughter and the steady, resolute heartbeat of his loyal protector, an unspoken promise that no matter the threat, they would face it together. The walk back to the village was quiet, almost surreal. Arav clung tightly to Buddy's side, still trembling from the encounter with the wild dogs, while Buddy trotted steadily beside him, every step deliberate, protective, yet calm now that the immediate danger had passed. Arav's father followed behind, eyes scanning the forest, heart pounding with a mix of relief, awe, and lingering fear. He had witnessed firsthand the unwavering courage of a dog who would not think twice before risking everything for his family. As the village came into view, the familiar outlines of the houses, the winding lanes, and the small marketplace felt comforting, yet charged with tension. The villagers, who had grown increasingly wary of Buddy, now awaited news of the walk. Whispers traveled fast, and soon a small crowd gathered at the edge of the path, eyes wide with curiosity and apprehension. Arav, still holding Buddy close, stepped forward. "Buddy saved me. He fought the wild dogs and kept me safe," he shouted, voice trembling but filled with excitement. The crowd fell silent for a moment, absorbing the story. Then, slowly, reactions split. Some villagers, particularly the parents of children who had once feared Buddy, nodded, their expressions softening. "Perhaps we misjudged him," one said quietly. "He is loyal and brave beyond measure." Another added, "He has saved a child again. How can we deny what he has done?" But fear is not easily erased. Others in the crowd frowned, shaking their heads. "Yes, he saved the boy, but he fought fiercely," one man said. "How do we know he won't turn on someone else next time?" "Strength without control is dangerous," muttered another. The whispers, though less accusatory than before, still carried unease. Buddy had proven his courage, but the villagers' judgment hung like a shadow, a reminder that trust must be earned anew with every act. Arav's father stepped forward, raising his hands to calm the gathering. "Look at him," he said, voice steady and commanding. Buddy, sensing the attention, stood tall beside Arav, head high, fur damp from the forest, eyes gleaming with calm determination. "This dog is not a threat. He is a protector, a loyal friend. He has proven his courage and devotion countless times. He is part of our family, and no fear or prejudice will change that." The villagers murmured, some nodding reluctantly, others still cautious. Slowly, tension began to ease, replaced by admiration, and for some, awe. Buddy had not only saved Arav, but had reminded everyone of the quiet strength that loyalty and love could command. Arav hugged Buddy tightly, whispering, "I knew you'd protect me. You always do, Buddy. You're my best friend forever." Buddy rested his head against the boy, tail sweeping gently along the ground, as if responding, "I will always be here, no matter what." That evening, as the family returned home, Buddy settled near the doorway, surveying the familiar courtyard with satisfaction. Arav ran ahead to fetch water for the evening meal, his laughter echoing while the parents prepared dinner with a renewed sense of pride in their companion. The village, still cautious, had begun to see the truth, that Buddy's loyalty was not a fleeting instinct, but a deep, unwavering commitment that had shaped every action of his life. As night fell, the stars twinkled above, and the soft chirping of crickets filled the air. Buddy lay beside Arav, who had drifted into sleep, and gazed out into the quiet village. The path ahead was uncertain, Whispers of doubt still lingered in the minds of some, and challenges would come again. But for now, the bond between boy and dog was unbreakable, forged in trials, courage, and unwavering devotion. In that tranquil night, under the glow of the moon and the distant flicker of lanterns, Buddy understood a simple truth. Loyalty is measured not in words, but in action. Love is proven not by fear, but by steadfast presence. And as long as Arav needed him, Buddy would remain, a guardian, a protector, a loyal friend who faced every danger without hesitation and loved without condition.